Hey.
John, how are you?
Well, thank you. How are you all?
I'm doing well.
Between John's and Matt's, we didn't have much.
Train on the way here. Okay, do I wait for it or do I go around?
Got to go around.
Did you go around?
No, I ended up waiting for it.
Well, me too. I thought surely it would have to. Of course, you know, the police don't watch those railroad crossings anymore. And that's easy money. It's, you know, there's an ordinance that you can't block a railroad for longer than, I don't know, I thought it was 15 minutes.
I think it is.
And there are many times when Norfolk Southern will stop and have Main and 6th and, you know, all the way out maybe the Industrial Drive blocked.
When they was replacing this bridge out here, remember when a bridge there a handful of years back?
Yeah.
It was a nightmare to get. Well, usually it is, but past 2 months they want me to come in during the week as well, so I sent the answer to you.
All right, looks like it just clicked 4 o'clock. So I'd like to call this meeting to order July 17th, Hannibal Board of Public Works, regularly scheduled meeting. All right, for our invocation today, Lord, guide us to the best value outcome for all of our ratepayers. We ask that you keep our dedicated workers safe in their dangerous endeavors, and we pray that you keep us on a steady path of providing dedicated employees in the provisioning of all the constant electric, water, and sewer operations. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Installation of officers looks like is on the next item.
I'll make a motion that John continue as board president.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move that Bill Dees stays as secretary of the Board of Public Works.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And I'll make a motion that Bill Fisher remains as vice president of the Hannibal Board of Public Works.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, aye. And I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any comments from the audience?
I have a comment.
Okay.
Following up. Did it work? It's green. All right. All right. I talked to John on Friday about the enigma of stormwater and what's to be done about it. And he told me that he had been advised that the Board of Public Works is restricted in trying to generate actual data concerning the condition of the underground stormwater system in Hannibal by the Hancock Amendment, which echoed The same thing that Mr. Gordon told me some months ago. And that's not so. And so I took the liberty of printing out the Hancock Amendment, their sections 18 through 24 of the Missouri Constitution, Chapter 10. And I can't find any mention there of municipal utilities. The Hancock Amendment is an amendment to the Missouri Constitution that limits tax increases to those that are approved by a vote of the people. And it also, and this is something that you should bear in mind, it also provides that the state of Missouri, by statute or otherwise, cannot impose mandates upon counties and cities without funding them. One of the things that we've heard is, the DNR or somebody, whoever is in charge of MS3, whatever that is going to come in and punish us for not doing something along these lines. Well, they can do that as long as they bring their checkbook with them, at least according to the Hancock Amendment. Now, you should each have a copy of that. I offered a copy to Courtney this morning and asked that she make copies, and so that you all have got it. And I will say this, as I have said often to my children: you might not be a lawyer, but you know how to read. And most legislation and other legal provisions are written down in fairly plain language. It's the people in the practice of law that makes them hard to understand. If you just look at it at face value, you can pretty well tell what it means. And while we're on the subject, and I don't want to take up too much time, it would be my suggestion that the Board of Public Works and the City Council start over and start with actual data on what the task ahead of us might be. I think you've been taken for a ride by Black and Veatch. I think they provided you with a whole bunch of stuff that was already in the computer based on programs and information and proposals they sold to, I don't know, maybe a dozen other cities that just change enough to make it tailored to Hannibal. But if you don't have the data on the shape and condition of those underground pipes and culverts and so on and so forth, Black and Veatch certainly doesn't have that data. And so their recommendations to you are no more based on what's actually underground than what you could do just on your own. And I will say that for 4 years I was responsible for the stormwater system in the city of Hannibal, and we had a system for solving those problems, and it worked for us just fine. At that time, we had an effective and fully staffed street department. And if we had a problem, we had many problems when I was mayor. We had many problems with stormwater failures, collapses under buildings on private property, and so on, everything that you can imagine now. And the street department, it wasn't up to me. Charlie Salyer knew what to do. He required no instruction, because he'd been doing that ever since he went to work for the street department. And they'd go in and they would repair the damage, repair the surface over it, and we'd go on to the next problem. And so I think it is a recipe for heartache and maybe even disaster to say, well, the Board of Public Works over here is going to have to find a tax in order to take care of what's underground, and the City Council over here is going to be required to look after all of our open drainage. That just doesn't make any sense at all. Or maybe if it does make sense, I wish somebody would explain to me how it makes sense. We ought to have we're one city, we ought to have one strategy, we ought to have one system for solving those problems, and it ought to be a matter of whomever can accomplish the goal will chip in and do that. As I mentioned, you all have television equipment that can go through sewers. That would be just exactly what we need, is to find out what the condition of our stormwater sewers are. And if you had that, my recommendation would be, don't make the Board of Public Works responsible for that, but that would be really great information for the city council to have. And it would also be nice if we once again had a civil engineer on the city payroll. I know you all can't do anything about that, but if we're going to tackle something that Black and Veatch, by means I don't understand at all, anticipates this is a $40 million project. If we're going to go forward and try to tackle that project without having a civil engineer on the payroll, what we're just running in place. It just makes no sense whatsoever. So, based on the conversation I had with John here earlier or late last week, I just wanted to come and offer that for whatever value it might have to you all. And again, appreciate your opportunity, or you're giving me the opportunity to visit it. Thank you so much.
Good things to think about. Thank you, John. Okay.
Yeah.
So moving right along to the general manager's report.
All right, thank you very much.
Turn your thing on green, please.
Thank you very much. I will tell you that I have somewhat of a, I've got a couple things to share. Number one, what is the value of a hometown utility? I think sometimes we take the BPW for granted. There's been some discussion and looking at what we do, and we appreciate that we have folks from the community that come and have interest in what we do. And sometimes we feel like we're the redheaded stepchild that's out in the cold and perhaps doesn't get seen. I've often said that we're the ones that you don't know what we do until we don't do it. And yet we get called in the middle of the night when the water's out or the power's out, which is seldom, but we respond quickly and we do a great job of getting things back on. And yes, I'm patting myself on the back, but there are some values that we bring as a publicly owned utility. Well, number one, there's 4 of these things that I want to cover real briefly. Number one, local control. The very fact that you gentlemen live in the community, and if there are concerns that need to be had or heard, this is where people can come. You can come and they can contact any one of you, and you represent the people. And there's a value to that. There's a real power to that. And I think sometimes that is overlooked. We have these open meetings that are open, and we handle local issues very well, consistently, and with professionalism. Number 2, it's affordable. Now, this is one of those where we look at around us, and sometimes we have cooperatives that are taking, and those co-ops can have very competitive electric rates. But it's sort of like comparing apples to oranges. That electric co-op, all they do is they have electric members, they take and do electricity only, and that's who they serve. We are responsible to the city, and with that, we actually pay 2.5% of every dollar we collect through our rates to the city. And with that, and I'll let Paul talk later about how much that is, it's in the reports we provide you, but we do that. And so there's 5.5%. If you were to take all of our rates, reduce them by that 5.5%, we become exceptionally competitive with every single one of the electric co-ops that are out there. The other thing is that around us we have others that are for-profit organizations, and we are much better priced than what they are. Water, sewer, those things are also very competitive. Also remember, when it comes to the water, we'll talk about the environmental responsiveness that we have exceptionally good water because of filters and things that we've done at the behest of the community. So again, going to number 1, do we listen to the community? Yes, you've got filters that prove just that point. Are we environmentally conscious? Yes. Again, filters, again, the way we're getting our portfolio. Are we invested in the community? Sometimes we don't get full credit for that 5.5%, but what we also show is that we have not only that 5.5%, but we're providing all utilities to the city which is another dollar amount that you can see on these reports that we provide you. So it's actually above and beyond that 5.5% that we are providing to the city that the citizenry is not having to touch or pay. The investment in the city also comes with us providing jobs. We have over 70 jobs that we provide. Many of those folks live here in Hannibal. And I will tell you, I kind of want to crow about the quality of people that we do hire and that work for us and are loyal to us, and that their children are in our schools, their families are here, and they provide things to our community. An interesting thing is that for every dollar of public power employees' paycheck circulates through the local economy at an estimated 4 to 5 times. That comes from an APPA study that was done. So us being a part of this community is very, very, very valuable to the community. Finally, the last bullet point I have is talking about the environmental responsiveness that we have. We do have those filters at the water plant, but also if you look at the electric portfolio which we have, we are looking at increasing the amount of renewables. We're looking at putting a solar field out at the airport. We're looking at making sure that the grain belt, when it comes through, we are one of the driving forces that helps that come and be a part of that. And we're looking at that being part of our portfolio into the future and being a significant part of our portfolio. Having said all of those things, we love serving the citizens of Hannibal. If you look at our mission statement up here, one of the things that we do it all with excellent customer service. And I don't think there's a single person out there that has not met one of our workers out in the field that don't say they're just absolutely professional, helpful, and go above and beyond. And we are thrilled with that. Our customer service representatives here in the office, they're always the ones, that's the person that nobody's happy with because you're paying them something, and yet they do it with great kindness, professionalism, and they represent us very well, and so we're very proud of them. So there's my first statement talking about what our value is of the BPW as a community-owned utility. The second thing, kind of addressing what Mr. Ling had talked to, is that we are moving forward with our Stormwater Action Committee. We've met several times now. The last meeting we had a couple of things that were successful. Number one, Mr. Ling brought up that we're asking for $40 million. Well, I'm going to make it even worse than that. We're asking for $40 million for the first 10 years. And that this is something that must continue because we need to take and create a stormwater utility that we're able to operate, maintain, replace, repair for the next perpetuity beyond that 10 years. Now, we have talked as a board that we would go from $4 to $3.5 million. We could do that. If we ended up with even less than that, I would simply recognize that in order to do anything, it takes two things. It takes usually time and money. And so if we simply reduce the amount of money, it just simply means we're going to do less and less over that period of time. The amount of work that needs to be done will remain. The system will continue to deteriorate, but we also know that we need to have something before the citizenry of Hannibal that will pass a vote in the April 2024 election, and that's what we're shooting for. We've got our next goal. We have our next meeting on the 27th. We invite everybody to come to that. Our next goal is to come up with 3 funding mechanisms that as a committee they would accept. Whether that's impervious surface, whether that's per lot. We have also been asked to take a look at if that was a per meter or per zone per the county zoning. And if we simply assigned a set amount for each of the zones that's available. And Matthew and Matt and Paul have all helped to do just that. And so we've got that to take to them. We want 3 mechanisms selected. We're then going to set a meeting date for a Saturday, which is going to be longer than just an hour or so. And we're going to ask them to whittle it down from that 3 down to 1 and come up with a consensus, which means every one of those committee members that are in attendance will vote yes for it. The other thing we've told them is that nobody's going to like it. Absolutely nobody's going to put their arms around this and say, my goodness, this is exactly what we want. I don't even want it. None of us want it because it's a tax. And yet, there's a duty that we need to do. And so that's the consensus we're shooting for. And so that's kind of the timeframes and what we're looking for the outcome of this Stormwater Advisory Committee. That's the end of my report. If there's any questions of me, I will add two more things. In my report, I also share with you Erica Mitchell, who's our public relations officer. I don't know if that's exactly the right title, but that's what she's doing. She's got a great report in there. She's been doing some outreach. She's got plans of us outreach, giving information out to the community, and she's done a great job with that. Please look at your agenda for that. Also, internally, it's summertime. One of the events that I really, really enjoy is we have our Bring Your Kids to Work Day, and it's exceptional. It's just, again, kind of going back to that first bullet point where our families bring great things to Hannibal. They really do. We're proud of our employees, every single one of them. We're proud of their families, the good things they are, and the good people they are. Human resources there. Beverly is always working hard. We've got some outreach there, and we're taking care of our people the very best we can. And we had Kenny Garcia, who's retired after 40 years being here with the BPW as a lineman, and a couple of other positions prior to that. But he's been here a long time.
Congratulations to him. That's a long career, and to do anything.
You bet.
40 years plus is a big deal.
He's dedicated.
Thank you, Kenny.
Thank you, and I'm done.
Okay. Any questions or comments about Aaron's report? Nope. Having heard none, Mr. Munslinger, if you could give us the operations report.
Good afternoon. As you can see here in our electric report, we still continue our animal-related outages. We had 33 outages for the month, and 17 of those were related to animals, either birds or squirrels. As noted last month, Jared and his guys have been working on identifying some of these areas that are repeat offenders and seeing what else can be done to help mitigate that interaction between the power and the animal in an attempt to keep people into service. So it did cause our reliability to go below the 4 nines that we strive for. So again, that's a 12-month rolling average. Water system, we continue to see our trend of water going up. Again, comparative to previous years, we think the previous 2 years were overstated. We found a meter through our water audit that was actually showing we're producing about 250 gallon a minute more to the high side of our system than was actually going through it. And so we've got a temporary meter on there till the failed meter is replaced as part of our a gravity filter rehab project, hopefully occurring later this year. We rebid the water treatment plant roof project, and we'll talk about that later in the meeting. We did have one GHG exchange that occurred June 6th. We've got another one scheduled for the end of July. Again, we're just trying to get on the vendors' schedule. They're having problems getting trucks and making sure availability of material. On the water distribution side, we talked last month about how we had the company in here doing leak detection. They found 31 leaks so far, and so far we've completed 18 of those repairs. We've got 13 yet to do that we're working on, and all of those leaks were identified as being less than 5 gallon a minute by the leak detection company. So they're continuing to work through that list, as we also have some other leaks that have come up and some areas we want to get some main replaced around schools and whatnot before school goes back into session. Sewer treatment plant, our flows are relatively low for the month just due to the dry weather, low river levels. We don't have that influence of groundwater, and so you'll see here, June of 22, we were up about 4.1 or 4.8 million gallons a day average. This month we were only 2.8. So we still do have a clarifier that is down due to a bearing failure. We were supposed to have that part at the end of June, and now push that back to the end of July, and we'll get that replaced as soon as possible. We did also complete all of our pretreatment permittee inspections during the month, and so we're good to go for another year with that. Sewer crew had a pretty uneventful month. We no SSOs. We had 9 reported stop-ups. One of those was on us. That was where we had installed a new manhole, and while the street department was paving the street to complete their repair, it shoved the manhole. We filled the manhole full of asphalt, resulting in one residence backing up. But they were able to get that jackhammered out and that service restored to that customer. So as far as technology, we're rolling into a new budget year. We had the migration of NISC to the cloud last month, and now into the new budget year, we're planning on a replacement of our technology, including potential replacement of our iPads, depending on how they continue to provide service. And that's all I've got as far as the operations report, unless you all have any questions.
Any questions? If you could proceed to projects, please.
All right. Highlight 2 things on this one. North Street, there's been some personnel change over at PSBA. They got the contract for the design of the North Street storm sewer repair, and that's the one that the city was able to get $5 million for the replacement of. We met with a gentleman from there, PSBA, the other day, and so we're continuing on down that path with utilizing them for the time being for the finish that design and potentially go out to design or bid and construction with them. And then as far as electric projects go, the Finn substation project is complete. So that's all I've got for that, unless you all have any questions.
Any questions? Would it be better for you to stay up here and go out of order and take care of the water treatment plant roof item?
That's up to you all. I can do that.
Yeah, if you could do that, so you don't need to play musical chairs, really.
Really want to save financial for last?
I better get the money spent before you hear how we're doing there, hadn't I?
Go, Matt, go.
All right, this is the replacement of the roof on the main part of the building at the water plant. We went out to bid in May. We went out to bid in May and determined that due to there only being one bidder and a asphalt shingle roof costing roughly $244,000, that we put it back out to bid. As you can see there in the information I just provided to you, we were able to get better bids this time. We did have 3 contractors show interest. The first option A, is for the replacement of the asphalt shingle roof with standing seam metal. Option B is replacement with asphalt shingle roof. Low bidder on both is Martin General Contractors out of Eolia. Metal roof price of $237,555, or asphalt shingle price of $161,029. If you go out the years of useful life, the metal roof pays for itself. There's a 20-year warranty on the metal roof, though we know the life will extend well beyond that. They provide a 40-year paint warranty on it. If just the 20-year warranty, it costs roughly $12,000 a year, where asphalt shingle is only a 15-year prorated warranty. And if you spread this cost out over 15 years, it's costing about $10,800 a year. So there's only about $1,000 a year difference. And so it is our recommendation that you all approve the award Martin General Contractors for the installation of the metal roof.
Makes sense. Did Miko spec the gauge or anything on that?
Yes.
24 gauge.
Is that
I think it's right there in the
It's
bid
in that
tab. It's
quote.
24 gauge standing seam metal roof.
okay?
Line item 4.
Thank you.
I mean, these days metal is pretty much known to be a 50-year product.
Mhm.
And don't doubt that it wouldn't be on this one. And asphalt shingles would never be a 50-year deal.
The asphalt shingles are there that were installed in the early 2000s. I'm thinking around 2005, 2006, something like that. Every other roof up there that we've put on has been metal. So,
And Martin Engineering or Martin Contractors has experience in the metal, okay.
yes. They did almost a $5 million expansion for us at the water plant back in 2015, 2016, where they replaced some of the roof up there, especially over the hallway with the metal roofing.
Motion to approve Martin General Contractors as the selected bid
For the metal
For
roofing.
metal.
for metal.
Metal?
Yes.
I'll second that.
Yeah. I guess if we vote on it, do I hear a vote? Hey?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah,
All right. Thank you all.
that sounds good. Thanks for your work. And Paul.
All right, financial report for June, which concludes our fiscal year. We'll start with the balance sheet that you've got there in front of you. So just to compare ourselves to the previous month, we did have a pretty significant decrease in cash. June is always a pretty heavy cash month for us. We do pay our MIRMA insurance premium every year in June, as well as multiple debt service payments for interest and principal. With the payment for MIRMA insurance, there's an offsetting increase in our current assets as we do record that as a prepaid expense. So it's actually recognized on a monthly basis throughout the next fiscal year on our income statement.
Was that 138,000?
It was actually $638,000 or $650,000. Pretty much everything else on the balance sheet, there wasn't anything else significant. Total assets were down by about 5% from a year ago. Next page on there is our current month for June compared to budget. We actually had a net income utility-wide this month of about $47,000. The electric fund was slightly behind budget due to lower revenues that came in than anticipated. But purchase power costs did come in right at budget for the month. You'll recall that this is the first month, June, with our new capacity as they run from June to May. And so we had that all budgeted, and it came out right at budget for the electric fund. The water fund did finish the month just slightly behind budget, and the sewer fund was well ahead of budget due to much lower operating expenses. Compared to last year, the electric fund did much better. You'll recall that last year was the first month, obviously, of the much higher capacity that we had for the electric fund, and so we had a $226,000 loss in that fund last year. And so this year, net purchase power costs were about $418,000 less. But at the same time, kilowatt hour sales were about 7% less this year than last. The water fund did outperform the previous year due to higher revenues, and the sewer fund was behind last year due to lower revenues. So the exact opposite. So with the conclusion of our fiscal year, I wanted to briefly run through just the financial statements for the electric fund. So that's on page 20 for the year-to-date compared to budget. So we had budgeted to bring in, as far as revenues, so the money that we charge for our electric utility, we had budgeted about $25,142,000, and we brought in about $25,070,000, and so we were right at budget revenue-wise, very accurate there in electric. For purchase power, budgeted to spend just under $19 million. We ended up spending $25,640,000 for a $7,723,000 variance. Obviously, $3.4 million of that was capacity, and then the remainder was just due to higher energy costs that we've seen pretty much all year. Fortunately, there was an offset with our Prairie State MISO credits. We'd budgeted to bring in $3.7 million in those credits from Prairie State, and we brought in just over $8 million. So the net difference there was just about $2.4 million that we paid more in purchase power compared to budget. Operating expenses, which is essentially everything else outside of purchase power, we budgeted $8,116,000, and we spent $7.9 million, so about $215,000 less. Primarily there was the electric fund. We did pay quite a bit less overtime than we typically would, and so most of that was labor, most of that decrease compared to budget. Depreciation, we budgeted $1,080,000 and spent $1,091,000. And then interest, we had budgeted $384,000 and paid about $391,000. So very close on both of those items. All of that leads us to our net income, our revenues less our expenses, which was a $1.9 million loss in the electric fund compared to a $345,000 net income that we had budgeted. So you can kind of apply that same principle of money brought in, money out to both the water and sewer funds as well. And I won't go through those in detail. Both of those we're pretty close to budget for the year. The sewer fund did perform quite a bit better than budget, primarily to higher revenues in that fund. So utility-wide, our net income was, our net loss was about $921,000 compared to our budgeted net income of $1.2 million. And again, the primary reason for that was capacity. So those financials you've got before you are essentially our financials for the year. Obviously, we'll have some payables that'll still be adjusted as we get things paid and some other adjustments that'll be made. So do keep in mind that those are all unaudited, and so there are likely to be changes between now and when our audited financials are done. And so without the unexpected capacity cost, the electric fund would have finished the year with a net income of approximately $1.5 million. And that same capacity will cost us about $2.3 million next year, and we've got that in the budget. So flip on down now to page 22. Look at our cash reserves briefly. So we started the calendar year in the electric fund right at over $17 million in reserves. As of June 30th, we're now at $13 million in reserves, and so that net loss in the electric fund and the added capacity payments has depleted those reserves quite substantially. And then our debt service coverage ratio finished the year at about a negative 0.6 in that fund as well. And so we'll be working to get back in compliance with that next fiscal year. Lastly, right in the middle of that page, we report on our water main leaks. Typically we have about 5 or 6 on average every month. You'll see we had 17 for the month of June. The majority of those leaks, I believe 11 or 12 of those were identified by the FIDO leak detection study that we've got going on. And so you'll see that number remain pretty high here over the next couple months as we continue working on those leaks that were identified. So definitely some good work being done there and getting all those fixed. That concludes my report. Does anybody have any questions on anything?
Yeah, is that survey almost done, or where do we stand?
We were, what percentage would you say we got through?
They had some areas they couldn't get to because the valves we hadn't visited the valves before they got there. And so they've left. They're going to come back later this fall and visit those areas again. And it also gave us time to address these 31 leaks. They'll go out and survey those areas again and make sure it wasn't a bigger leak that was hiding a smaller leak behind it. Mm. And so by this fall, we
will be done this fall.
Finished up.
Okay, thank you.
Well, do you know what the city does with $16,000 worth of water? Is this right? Am I reading this right?
So right now, one of the biggest things is
Oh.
at the swimming pool, there's a leak.
No.
The swimming pool's got a leak in their filter. We're aware of it, we've let them know about it. We understand they probably can't shut down the swimming pool for the summer, but I think we're working on a plan to address that right at the end of the summer. and try that. Mike, do you agree? Matt, do you have anything different than what I just said?
Okay.
Outside of that, I think they average closer to between $800 and $1,200.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last 2 months were just crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's good. You're right.
Anybody have any questions about Paul's report?
Nope.
Nope. Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
And do we have any comments from the city attorney?
Yes, I was just going to address some of the issues that were brought up earlier by Mr. Ling.
Good.
So one of the things he mentioned is that the amendment is a very easy read. Because of the amendment itself and the different changes it put into effect, it actually was challenged multiple times, and therefore there's a lot of case law on that. And case law is not as easily available to the public. You normally have to have some type of special login and be able to browse those cases. One of those, though, is that you cannot spend money on stormwater unless you have it already allocated and approved. If it's taxed, you got to have it approved by the voters, which is really where we're at here as on a standstill, is that we need to be able to get this approved. That way we do have money to spend for items that he did bring up. We can't just take it out of, the general city revenue or anything like that, which he kind of alluded to that happened while he was mayor, but I don't know the validity of that, but by the case law, that's just not allowed right now.
So the Hancock Amendment doesn't come out and say you can't use money for stormwater that you collect from electric or water or sewer.
Correct. That was more so in a court case that happened. Mm-hmm. And I believe that was a St. Louis City court case, if I believe correctly. But that was probably 2013, 2014 that case happened. Mm-hmm. And that was really what changed the real meaning behind the Hancock Amendment.
Is that available that you might be able to give me a copy to send to him?
Yes, I can do that.
So for my clarification, when I say we need to have this stormwater fee tax and that we can't spend our other utility monies on it, that is a correct statement, and it's based on the case law of the Hancock Amendment.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Now, you mentioned it was case law only about stormwater. Is it generally also accepted that you can't use electric money to fund water?
That's correct. The Hancock Amendment is pretty much that if you tax something, it has to be used specifically for what it's taxed. So we cannot go out and tax the residents here for water usage and then use it on electric, because that would be in violation of the Hancock Amendment.
The term tax is the same as rates?
Yeah.
Fees.
Rates, fees. We have to specifically say what we're going to raise that money for.
Mm-hmm. Okay, super.
And the case law then kind of sets direction every time there's a new trial or a new challenge, then that resets the direction slightly. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. It may change how it's interpreted for any lower courts that are under whatever court decides. So this specific case was actually decided by, I believe, the Missouri Supreme Court. So therefore, that directs all courts in Missouri have to abide by that ruling.
That makes sense.
Interesting. Thank you very much.
Thanks for that.
Moving along, do we have any general discussion? Yeah, Darren, I'm really glad that you brought up in your report about the value of city-operated utilities. The only thing I'd ever heard was a few months ago in one of the first meetings, the gentleman brought up, why don't we just send everything to Ameren, sell all our assets and do that? And I deal with Ameren in other cities, and it's okay and it gets done, but there's no real connected feeling with the people who live there because they know they're calling a publicly held stock trading for-profit company. And when you have a problem, you write a letter or complain to somebody. You can't just knock on your office door. So there's really true value to that. I appreciate you bringing it up.
Thank you.
Moving along, I guess we're looking to go into closed session.
Do you have anything that you want to do? Now or later?
Let's do it later,
Okay.
if that's okay.
Closed session pursuant to section 610.021312 of the Missouri Sunshine Law. The meeting shall convene in closed session to discuss personnel and contracts. Please admit Darren, Matthew, Courtney, Bob, and Ethan.
That sounded like a motion.
Bob, could you stick around just for a minute?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.